Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to World at War Comics. My next special guest is Mr. Jorge Medina, comic book creator, writer extraordinaire. You got that Russ 5377 shirt on right there.
That's
George, I know
right.
we were just talking 25th anniversary of Russ.
Yeah.
You don't look old enough to be doing this that, man.
Yeah, looks can be deceiving.
Yeah, for sure, bro.
thank, thank you for having me on, Tom. I appreciate you, man. Hell of an intro. Hell of an intro.
There you go, man. There you go. Well deserved, man. I mean, anybody that has been in this game for as long as you have, man, you deserve all the respect.
Thank
It's
you.
fun, man. It's it's probably simpler now for someone to create a comic than ever before,
Oh yeah.
but it's no less hard work
hmm
putting it forward, man. And for
hmm
someone like yourself to be able to do this for as long as you have, George, congratulations, man.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. You mentioned it's easier to do it now, right? And
Yeah.
it is. I guess it's easier than what it was when we started doing it way back in like the early 2000s.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is a double-edged sword because the problem with that now is that because it's easier, a lot more people are doing it.
Yeah.
And so there are a lot more and some of the stuff that is being put out now, the quality of the stuff that's being put out now is just it's out of control. It rivals a lot of the big two, Marvel and DC. It,
Absolutely.
it rivals a lot of that stuff. Yeah, no. So while it's easier, no, you mentioned when I started this way back in the early 2000s, not too many people were doing it because it was harder to do, right? Now it's easier to do it, but because it's easier to do it, a lot more people are doing it. And the quality of the work that's being put out there rivals Marvel and DC. So, it's easier, yes, but when you go to conventions, there's a sea of creators with top-notch stuff that now you have to kind of like try to see if you can kind of, stand out a little bit amongst the crowd. So yeah, it's definitely gotten harder.
Yeah, for sure, man. And yeah, I mean, it's such a good point that you make because I feel like I'm a big DC fan. Always love
Mhm.
DC. I love Marvel too. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not one or the other for me. I enjoy them both, but DC has always kind of been my thing, man. But I will tell you, in like last 6 or 7 years, I've really fallen in love more with the indie side of comic
Mm.
books. For that point that you made, George, I mean, the amount of quality that's coming out of the indie scene, the storylines,
Yeah.
some of these stories are so amazing they would never be done in a Marvel or DC because that's not their wheelhouse, right? They just will never go that route. But man, we're being blessed with a lot of incredible storytelling through
hmm
all these indie creators, man. You included, right? I mean, you were there
Thank you.
much further along than a lot of these other folks that are coming up. But man, I'm watching these young folks come up and they're putting forth some killer products, bro. Killer, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. Oh yeah. I mean, there's tons, and you see it when crowdfunding. Kickstarters. You click on you go into comic books, and you'll see the list, and you'll see all of these just beautiful images that are popping up. You're like, holy cow! You go to conventions now, and every you'll look at a book and you'll be like, wow, like who published this? Like it's gotten to that point, and so I think part of that is I like it because it makes you step up your game. You have to be better as a creator, as a writer, as an artist. It makes you get better and better and better. And I think that that's helping grow the industry and talent wise or quality wise. We just got to be careful that we don't kind of like just eat each other up and kind of like we got to build each other so that we can get to the top. But it happens, and I get it. But yeah.
Yeah, I agree, man. I feel like at least in my experience, no doubt there's going to be backstabbing no matter what
Uh,
industry you're in, right? But I
yeah.
feel for the most part, I don't know if you feel the same way, George, but the community that we have in Indy, at least the people that I've met have been super helpful, always
hmm
willing to provide advice. We kind of back each other up when we have Kickstarters and stuff like that. And I'm very new to the NE1 world. I know you and I were talking
Yeah.
about 80s before this.
Yeah.
Um, there's just so many, even there. I mean, NE1 world, I think he has over 120 titles now. It's
Yeah. He's
crazy. Just
yeah.
quality stuff, man. And everyone has been so welcoming. And
Yeah.
I don't know, man, it's just been cool.
Yeah. No. I mean, yeah. Like you said, there's always going to be backstabbing and things like that in industries, and you'll see it here also amongst the indies or whatever. But I think, man, you just got to keep your head up and keep going. You know, it's going to happen regardless. But I think, you know, things like this, for example, you know, being on your podcast, I have a podcast, asking you to come on my podcast. Like, these are the type of things that I think will help us rather than hinder us. There's no reason why I shouldn't be giving you shine just like you're giving me shine. Like, there's no reason why we shouldn't do that for each other. And I think that, you know, we, as long as you connect with people like-minded individuals, you're going to be fine. You know, you're going to be fine.
I couldn't agree with you more, George. All right, my friend, I would love to kind of go back in time, that 1999 when George is at his table and he's trying to figure out his character and what the character is going to look like and how that developed into Russ. Can we kind of talk about that time?
Yeah.
Even maybe a little further back of where this passion for comic books started and how it kind of led into Russ. Can you take us through that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I was born. I was telling you before we came live. I was born in Ecuador,
Yeah.
Guayaquil, back in the '70s, late '70s. I'm an old man, dude. So I grew up, but I grew up around teachers. My aunts were teachers. They were educators, and some of them were art teachers. So the art bug bit me right very young, in my I guess in my life. And the first thing that I read were newspaper comic strips. Like Beetle Bailey, believe it or not, was out there in Ecuador doing his thing. And so when I saw that kind of storytelling, I was like, ooh, that's cool, right? Then you start watching the cartoons. I was, you know, back then it was, believe it or not, anime was even out there that early on. There was an anime called Messenger that I used to watch, and I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. It's probably Mazinga. I don't know. I'm not exactly 100% sure, but I was watching that, fell in love with that storytelling. Right. Fast forward, I come to the States. I'm 7 years old, and now I'm watching cartoons on TV. Right, the Saturday morning cartoons. You're watching all that stuff, and so again, but every time I watched that stuff, I wanted to create my own things. I never actually wanted to work for Marvel or DC or draw for them or do anything for them. I wanted to create my own things based on the stuff that I saw. So that's where kind of like it all started. And then fast forward, way forward to 1999, I'm in college. And now I'm just, you know, you doodle, you know, I'm bored in class, I'm doodling a character. And Russ comes out. Like I drew this character. I'm like, oh, that looks kind of cool. Gave him a name. Now I'm thinking, okay, I got to give him a story, right? What's his background? What's the story? At the time, I was working at a group home, an orphanage. And I was doing data entry work, and I came across a name on my desk. I used to enter all the kids' names that were in the location or whatever. Nonami comes up. Nonami, and that was the name. I was like, well, that's kind of cool name, but it wasn't a name. It was no name. The kid had no name. Nonami was no name, and I was like, wow, that's interesting. What if the character I created was this kid with no name, right? And who came into this orphanage but wanted to escape. And so now the gears are turning, right? I'm like, ooh, okay, that's cool. Why doesn't he know his name? Oh, maybe they erased his memory. You know, like, so all these things just start coming up, and Russ is born. Now the 5377 is his ID number at the home, but it also happens to be my date of birth. So I injected myself into the story that way. And then all the characters that you meet in the story were friends that I knew in college. You know, they were, and their numbers were their date of birth. So that's how I created that. And then I actually drew, colored, and did everything for the original book that came out way back in 2003. But I just wasn't a strong enough artist for it, so I decided, you know what, maybe I hire a group of artists, and this is the version of Russ that we have today. So that's kind of like how it happened.
That's incredible, man. And the longevity of Russ too is pretty impressive over all this time. And 25 years later, I know you said 2003 is when actually issue one was.
Yeah.
So the actually story when, like, you had the story before then, obviously, but by the time you
Mm-hmm.
put it on paper, right, 2003, and then all these years later, man, what is the driving force around this character that has caused you to be committed? Because we'll talk about some of your other titles that you have,
Yeah.
too, but you've been very committed to Russ. What is it about that storyline that has created that kind of a passion to kind of hold on for as long as you have?
I think part of what keeps me coming back is like it's almost that sense of unfinished business, right? I feel like I created this character way back in 1999, but I've never actually been able to do with him what I wanted to do, which is, you know, for like I told you, I grew up watching cartoons and all that stuff, putting them on TV, making a cartoon of it, and I still think that the character has so much potential that I just wanted to keep. I just want to keep doing it because I feel like I owe it to that character to continue to do what I'm doing until finally somebody's gonna say, "Hey, this looks like it could be on TV." So I think that's what drives me, you know, to continue to do what I'm doing with him. And the funny thing is, so it's a 6-issue miniseries that I wrote, compiled it, and put it into this book. But there are so many other stories about him in my head that I have for him because when I created the character, I knew that I wasn't going to be able to do an ongoing series. It's a lot of money, you know. I mean, publishing these books, you know, hiring artists, it's a lot of money. So I knew I wasn't going to be able to do an ongoing series, but I figured, okay, if I give people a nice introduction into the character, give them one arc, and leave it open to for more adventures, I can work with that. Let's see what happens from there. So that's kind of how I wrote the story. It's 6 issues, so 6 issues tells you a full story, and it's one arc. And then after that ends, the story could continue if I wanted it to, or it could end right there, and that's fine. But there are so many more stories of Russ that I have based on that premise that I just told you, leaving it open for other things that I still write stories for us, and I have like a story, you know, that I'm reading, and I'm actually looking for artists now that like we were talking about earlier. It's easier to make these books. It's, you know, the artists are more accessible. I'm looking to do that,
Yeah.
you know, within the next few years. So yeah, so that's all. That's the other thing of that.
Well, that's awesome, man. So let's talk about the trade, right? The graphic
Mhm.
novel. We were kind of talking about that a little bit before I hit the record button, but you have that 6 issue, man. We're gonna get blessed this year with a trade of those 6 issues, right? So does that mean you're gonna drop like a Kickstarter here coming soon and put it out there in that way?
No, so I thought about doing that. You know, crowdfunding today, Kickstarters, Indiegogo, whatever it is. I feel like because there are so many other books, it's very saturated, right? And so I felt like, you know what? Let me go old school on this. I linked up with Hades from ASAP Imagination, and he agreed to take the book on and publish it through the Anyone World. And so I decided, you know what? Let me go old school on this one. Let me do a pre-launch, like almost like not a pre-launch page the way you would do on a Kickstarter, but just you know, just almost like a sign up to buy the book, you know, pre-order, like back in the days, like we used to do. So that's what I'm doing. If you go to my website, getyourmeds.com, there is a pre-order for the book that will be released in May. So it will be released, you know, just that way. You can buy the book now, obviously, and you'll get a copy similar to what crowdfunding does. But I decided, you know what, let me go old school on this one. Let me just see how this goes, and that's how we're gonna do it. I'm releasing it in May, and it'll be through the Anyone World and ASAP Imagination. So that's how we're doing it.
That's so cool, man. So awesome, bro. Well, I mean, so we got Russ 5377. What I'll do is I'll put in the subject that link
Cool.
directly to any One World or to get your meds, and that way people can go pre-order right now. That way
Awesome.
in May, man, we'll get that in the mail. We'll all do some videos on Russ
That'd be great.
5377 about getting our
That'd be
book, right?
great. That'd be great. Yeah, the thing about so this particular I guess edition of the book is the 25th anniversary edition. When I was at the New York Comic Con last year, and I was able to get a spot there with a buddy of mine, Johnny C. Big shout out to him. He does a book called Surrounded by Death. Cool guy. He said, hey, let's share a table. So we did. And while you're there, you know, sometimes these shows are not just for selling, but it's also for networking, right? Because you never know who's going to come to the table, who you're going to meet, who you're going to talk to. And a young man from Argentina showed up at the table. And I asked him, I said, do you do commissions? Do you do work for hire? He's like, oh yeah, I do. I was like, all right, cool. After the show, when you get back to Argentina and I get back, you know, whatever, let's link up and let's do something. Loved his artwork. And so he, sure enough, after the fact, his name is Santiago Backwin. He did the cover for the new book. And you know, I send them the images that I did, the images that have been done. I said, just, you know, rock it out. Let me see what you got. And he came up with this beautiful cover. that's on the book now. So big shout out to Santiago Backwin, because he really did an amazing job with this cover.
That's so awesome, man. I will tell you, man, finding artists online through like Fever, however
Uh,
you pronounce it, and even I get crazy messages on my Instagram like, "Hey, I'm a manga artist. Are you looking for work?" I'm like, "Hey, man, show me what you got, right?" And
yeah.
I don't know about you. You've been in this a lot longer than I have, so you maybe you have some crazy stories, but a lot of times I would hire them to just like character work to help me out. And what they would send me, and then what I would get back are two like, dude, this is a different artist, man. Like I'm
Oh,
doing
dude.
art, bro.
Oh, that's one of the tough parts, right?
Yeah,
About this too, man, is all of that kind of stuff. Because yeah, you think you're getting something, right? You figure, oh, I just looked at your page. All that stuff is incredible. Wow, you did that. And then you hire them to do it. And when you get back, you're like, wait a minute, what what
when your
happened
kid's
here?
doing this, what's going on?
Yes, and that's the fear, right? And listen, and I get it. It probably goes on the other side too. Like artists will say, writers told me to do this. I did a bunch of pages for them, never got paid. There are horror stories all over the place, I'm sure. But there's nothing more like, I guess it's sad when you get something in the mail, in the email, because you get excited, man. Every time I get new art, it's like Christmas morning, right? You're like,
Heck yeah.
"Ooh, I'm about to open this up," and then when you see something that you're like, wow, that's not what I was expecting. It's like, what the hell? So yeah, it's happened. It's happened. It's definitely happened.
So I mean, that's what's amazing about being at some of these Comic
Yeah.
Cons. You're able to meet the artists, you're
Yeah.
able to have a conversation, and you're able to see their work. And man, that saves a lot of, I think,
Hmm.
stress sometimes
Yeah.
when you're able to do it that way, huh?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And the good thing is you start building a rapport, right? So you start talking to them and you understand, what if there's a language barrier, whatever the case may be. Luckily, I speak Spanish and he spoke, so we were able to communicate that way as well. But yeah, no, I mean, hey, I work with artists from the Philippines. You know what I mean? And while at first, and again, hired these guys way back in the early 2000s. At first, there was a language barrier. Now, if you hire somebody from the Philippines, man, they're quick. They got the language down packed, man. But back then, it was a lot harder because of the language barrier. Like you'd write something in a script, and you'd have to explain it a little bit, and there wasn't Zoom back in '05, '06. There wasn't
Right.
any of this stuff. So it was all through email, dude. It was all through email, and that that was a trip. That was a
Yeah,
trip.
snail mail, oh man.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yep, exactly.
Crazy. Well, George, can we talk about a couple of your other titles, man? The Adventures of Wonder Duck. Can you kind of talk about that character and how that came
Yeah.
about?
So I was telling you my journey here to the States. So when I was younger, remember I was watching all these cartoons. The Disney afternoon was my joint. Like I love the Disney afternoon, Darkwing Duck, DuckTales, Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, the Gummy Bears, all that stuff, right? In late 80s. I was watching a lot of that stuff. And one of the characters in DuckTales, Gizmo Duck, really stood out to me. I was like, oh, look at that. He had the one wheel and stuff like that. I was like, I need a duck like that. I need to create something like that. And that's what Wonder Duck was born. I took the wheel off, you know what I mean? I gave him, originally I had a cape on him. And I started writing stories about, Wonder Duck. And the way I was doing them back then, I wasn't writing scripts. I didn't learn about writing scripts and 11 by 17 sheets of paper back in until 2003 when I went to the School of Visual Arts and I met a buddy of mine there where I learned all that stuff. I was just kind of just drawing and writing as I went along. Like there was no script. I was just drawing the thing. And I would do like these like almost like cartoons, like my own cartoons on like it was crazy on like these little boxes. And I would just create these like reels almost of these cartoons. And so that's how it started. So in junior high I started reading comics and I was like, oh, I can put these ideas that I have of this cartoon that I want to make into still images and just create this comic book and do it that way. So I started doing that. And so I started, putting stories together of Wonder Duck. And then I put them away because then I created Russ and Russ took up a lot of my time. In '05, I think '03, '05, I decided, you know what? I'm going to revamp this character that I created when I was a kid and let's see what I can do with him now. So that's when I created the version of Wonder Duck you see today. I linked up with the same guys that were drawing Russ. I was like, hey, I got another project, and they were from the Philippines at the time. They were Nine Live Studios. They are Big Cat Studios now, But I linked up with them and I said, hey, I have another character that I want to do. Can you guys do this for me? Sure enough, they were like, hell yeah. And they gave me this. They gave me this version of Wonder Duck, which, I loved. I loved what they were doing. I was like, this is exactly what I was thinking when I created him. So that's where Wonder Duck came from. And that's when that's how he was born.
That's awesome, man. Can you kind of give us like, how many issues of Wonder Duck have there been done?
So the graphic novel or the trade that's out now has 4 issues in it.
Okay.
It's the first 4 issues. I'm currently working on the next 4 issues, which I'm hoping to have done by the end of this year, if not early next year, maybe spring. And that'll be the second part of that one, trade. And so in total, I have 5 issues because the fifth issue is already done. I kickstarted that in 2022, got that done, and now I'm just working on the last three chapters of that one book, basically, to kind of close out that one arc. So yes, it'll be 8 by the time it's done. It'll be 8 issues of Wonder Duck.
Nice. And are you going to put out issues 6, 7, and 8 individually, or you're just going to put out that second arc as a trade?
As a trade, yeah,
Okay,
as a
perfect.
trade, yeah, yeah. Printing, costs a lot of money when you're doing that, and it's in color and stuff like that. So I decided, you know what, let me cut the cost a little bit, put it in a trade, and put them out that way. I may combine the two into one compendium and do like one. It'll be like almost like a 200 page or maybe 250, I would say, book. But
Okay.
yeah, so that's what I'm gonna do. I'm probably gonna do that. But yeah, I'll put up the second part individually for people to just finish the story.
Yeah, for those who already have the first trade,
Mhm.
right? But
Yep.
man, I would love a compendium, man. That would be dope, man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'd love to do that, man. So I may have to do that. I may have to do that.
Just for me, George. Just for me, my
Just for you. I'm just gonna send you a copy. That's it.
yeah. Since you're trying to save costs, that makes perfect sense, man.
You ever seen how much it costs to do one sometimes of these things?
Oh, it's crazy,
It's
man.
out of control, dude. I'm like, what are we doing?
No,
But
no. I mean, there's a couple creators that have worked through China because you get some
mm,
amazing prices on like the
yeah,
compendiums or the trades. But I've heard like good things and I've heard horror stories of, you
sure.
pay for it and then it gets lost on the way over here, or it gets held up and you have to pay fees to get it across. So I don't know.
Yeah,
The pricing is like very enticing, but then
yeah.
what could go wrong is really bad and it could really
I
cost.
know, I know. And which is why I think digital comics have for us have become so something that we want to do more of. It's just finding the audience for it, and that shows. I feel like sometimes people want to walk away with something.
Yeah.
You can sell them a digital copy of a book, but you're basically just telling them go online and purchase it. When they probably want to walk away with something. So I'm actually working on a. So I'll be at Plastic City Comic Con in July,
Okay.
and what I'm going to do is I'm going to have digital copies of the book. But the way I'm doing it is I'm putting them in trading cards. So that you're going to get a trading card, and in the back of the trading card there'll be a QR code. Scan that QR code, and that will be your digital download.
That's
But
pretty
at
cool.
least you're walking away with something physical for coming to the show, and then you just go home, read it on your phone or whatever. But at least you're walking away with something rather than me saying, "Hey, just go online and buy it."
That's pretty smart, man. That's pretty awesome. Yeah, I would love to know how that goes, man, because that
Yeah.
could be maybe a little bit of the future for indie creators, right?
Right.
That do want to have another option other than physical. So I mean, I think they're completely different audiences too, right? I
Yes.
do read on both. I prefer physical,
Me too.
but I know people that prefer PDF just because they don't want to clutter a room with a bunch of comic books they probably will
True.
never look at again. I like holding them, man. I like getting your signature on it. I like putting
Right.
it in the
Right.
box, and yeah,
Yep.
it's
Yep.
it's just a portion of the nerdiness that I have that I enjoy, man. But
Yeah.
yeah, I
No,
mean, I
it
would love
is.
to hear. I mean, you could help out a lot of people by seeing how
Right.
it works out for you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I figured, it's something I got that idea actually, and I want to give her the credit because I love to give credit to people who say I was like, oh, that's a good idea. Daphne Lage, she had something similar to that. What she did was she folded like almost like a poster into like a little box this big. And when you opened up the poster, something you could hang up on your wall, but it also had the QR code for you to read your comic. So she did it that way. I was like, okay, that's cool. But I think that, with the trading card thing, trading cards being a big thing now, I figured, you know what, maybe something smaller would be a way to go. Not to say that those, a poster hanging up on the wall is kind of cool too, you know. So, but that's where I got the idea. So big shout out to her because I thought that was brilliant.
That's cool, man. All right, George. I believe there's one more title, Dead of Night.
Yes,
You
yes.
talk a little
So,
bit about that. That one I'm unfamiliar with, man. So can you give us a little synopsis?
yeah, Dead of Night is actually the brainchild of Hades from
Oh,
A$AP Imagination. So they have, so for those who don't know, A$AP Imagination is kind of split into two things, right? It's the Our World, which is their universe. It is A$AP Imagination's universe. It includes titles like Sister Grimm, Dead of Night. They have OPSEC on their whole. They have like their own universe, right? An event happens in the world where the gates of heaven and hell are opened and things and these things seep out, right? And it changes the world for the better in some cases, for the worse in some cases. The story that Hades asked me to write, and I appreciate him for even doing this, is he said, George, I want you to pick up this title. He wrote the first issue, asked me to write 2, 3, and 4. And the issue that the book that I'm writing is Dead of Night, which is about this knight, this hero that was like almost like a knight in shining armor kind of guy. He was a really good dude. His last name was Ward. He came from a family of almost like heroes kind of thing. But when that happens, when the event happens, things change. And he goes from hero to like this disturbed individual who just is looking for revenge and is looking for, and it's just angry, right? So that's the story. That's the story of the Dead of Night. So when I picked up this title, just going from some stuff like Russ 5377 and the Adventures of Wonder Dog to Dead of Night, it was like, it allowed me to kind of like stretch my writing muscles. And so I decided, you know what? Yeah, man, let's do it. So I wrote the second issue. That's up for pre-order now. So if you guys go to the A$AP Imagination website, you can go to the website and find Dead of Night. Issues 1 and issue 2 is on pre-order now. The art team behind it did an incredible job. It's got that very dark kind of like feel to it, and it's been a blast working with Hades and the people there. Laurie Cunningham, who's the editor, she was amazing. So yeah, it's been quite a journey, and it's been fun. It's been fun.
that's awesome, man. So are those
Yeah.
all the titles that you have so far, George, that you have written?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. Right now, I'm actually currently writing a story called "The Shameless Plug," and that's a little autobiographical. It's about a kid who comes from another country to this country and now has to fit in, and he has to realize sometimes to fit in you have to be yourself. But he has this imaginary friend who is the shameless plug, who's going to give him that boost to say, "Hey, man, you can do it. You can do this." So it's an uplifting story about a kid in a world that he doesn't know and he's trying to fit in. And I thought it'd be fun to write. So I have that coming out, and I'm hoping to have that out next year.
that's so cool, man. It sounds awesome. And both of us live in an area that a lot of immigrants live here, and I
Mhm.
think a story like that is so relatable for someone who is new in California or new in the country, man. That they all kind of need that person on the sideline going, "You got this, man. You got this, right?"
Yeah, yeah. Especially like, and I feel bad for the younger kids, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah. That's what it's for.
adults, whatever you come in and it's hard there too because you got to come to work and do all that stuff. And my mom was that person when she came here way back in the 70s, right? She had to get in here and had to figure out how to do work around. But I think when you're a kid
Yeah.
coming in a new environment, kids can be cruel sometimes. You know what I'm saying? And
Big time.
growing up in an area like that, I experienced how it was to be different. Because at one point I was too Hispanic for the American kids, and I was too gringo, too, you know what I mean, for the Spanish kids.
Yeah.
So where did I fit in at that point? Because I spoke English, but the Spanish kids were like, get out of here. You're just like them Americans, right? But I had a bit of an accent. So it was like, get out of here, you little immigrant boy. You know what I mean? Like, so where did I fit in? So it was kind of cool to kind of go back in time and write some of that stuff. And hopefully it comes out the way I thought it would come out of my head. So I'm looking forward to it.
No, it sounds awesome, man. And I do think it's going to be very relatable for a lot of people, not just young kids, but
Yeah,
people our age who had that same experience coming to the
true.
country for the first time, whether it was the 70s or 80s, right? So I think that's pretty cool, man. Man, George, that's so awesome, man. I'm so happy for you, and
Thank you.
congratulations on the 25th anniversary of Rust. I just think that's so awesome, man. I think everybody wants to have that kind of longevity with something that they've created, right?
Mhm.
And man, you're doing it, bro.
Yeah, brother. Yeah, man. And I'll continue. I'm gonna continue. I'm not gonna stop. This is like once you get bit by this bug, it's hard to stop. You
Exactly.
you you may, you may stop for a little bit, but eventually it's like the mob. They pull you back in. You
Yeah,
know
yeah.
those things. So yeah, no, man. It's been a blast, and I appreciate you for having me on to tell my story, and I thank you very much for that, man.
Oh, anytime, George. And I'm hoping that as we get closer to that May timeframe when the Russ trade will be coming out, we could have you back on and let's make a big
Sweet.
deal out of that, man, because
Appreciate
I just, in the indie world, right, not too many people make it more than a few years because it is expensive
it. Mhm.
and it is tough getting the support and building out the kind of fan base that you need to create that kind of longevity. So
Yeah.
anybody that I meet that's done even more than 5 years, I'm amazed at it, let alone 25 years later, man. So
Yeah,
we need
man.
to make a big deal about that, man. You're
Thank you.
yeah, that's something that's not easily done, my friend.
I appreciate you, brother. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to come back, and I want to have you on my show as well. So
Let's
yeah,
make it
definitely.
happen, man. You
We
let me
got to do
know.
it. All right. All right.
Well, George, I mean, I'll put all the links down below of how people could follow you. You're on all social media.
Hmm.
Your website is getyourmeds.com, and I'll put
Yep.
it down there because it's MEDZ.
Yeah.
So I'll make sure that's down there. But right now, people should be pre-ordering Russ 5377, the trade. Get your orders in now. As you know, as indie creators, man, get it in early so we know how many to buy, right? Let's
Yeah.
be practical,
Exactly.
bro. Let's make sure that
Exactly.
we know exactly what we need. But get out there, man. I mean, this is 25 years in the making, and it sounds like there's going to be more. And I couldn't be more happy for you. And I can't wait to get my trade, man. I'll be one of those folks
Awesome.
ordering it for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much, man. Thank you so much.
All right, Mr. George. Thank you so much for joining me. And until next time, man, have a great Friday and a weekend coming up, my friend.
Thank you. You too, brother. Thank
All
you.
right, man. Take it easy.
Peace.